A team of U.S. anti-terror Marines is reportedly heading to Libya to beef up security for diplomats. Let's get some reaction and analysis now from independent news editor James Corbett. Good to have you with us on RT, James. Now, the killed U.S. ambassador was Washington's envoy to the Libyan rebels during last year's revolution, which Washington backed. Will his death cause a break between two allies, or will the U.S. stance remain unchanged, do you think?
Well, I think that the U.S. is going to have to maintain their relations with the country in order to save face, because what this really has to represent, obviously we can't read too much into this situation at the moment, because as you say, it's sweeping across North Africa right now. But in the Libyan context specifically, we have to see this as a case of NATO's chickens coming home to roost after they were so complicit in the bombing, the carpet bombing of that country last year. And I think we have to see that at the very least, this type of incident, the storming of the embassy, the killing of a diplomatic official, just simply could not have happened. It would have been unthinkable under the Gaddafi government. So in order to maintain face, I don't think that we're going to see a falling out with the Libyan government and the National Transitional Council, which turned into the government in elections. I think we're going to see that the U.S. is going to maintain all diplomatic relations, but is going to beef up security, which I think is the predicted result of all of this.
Now, Libyan militias seized huge stockpiles of weapons during the revolution. Some of the guns were reportedly turned on the U.S. consulate last night. Why haven't the militias been disarmed yet?
Well, the question was who would be able to disarm them. I think that there's a false idea that's been floated in the American media, certainly, that Libya is a done deal and that was all wrapped up and all of the militias have been disarmed and everyone's been disbanded and gone back home. But people who've been actually keeping an eye on Libya since the American media turned its gaze away from that country have found that it has continued to have tensions and militias basically determining what's happening in various parts of the country. The fact that there is a government in Tripoli is kind of a government in name only in many respects and doesn't necessarily have control over the entire country. And this really just underlines that point, and the fact that the destabilization that occurred last year was not ultimately aimed at the freedom of the Libyan people generally and making it a better place, as unfortunately the American public has been told that was all about. It was more of a destabilization, and this is really, I think, something that we can expect more of in Libya and in fact across North Africa as it starts to flare up right now.
Let's talk about this controversial film. Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood has called for a nationwide protest against the film. Could the unrest spread across the country and the entire Muslim world?
I think it does have that effect, and we are starting to get reports now out of Tunisia and other places that these types of protests could be ramping up there as well. So I think this could turn into a major international incident, and we'll have to see what type of reaction would even be possible in this case when it's not clear, even if the U.S. wanted to retaliate for this type of action against their embassies, it's not exactly clear how they would be able to do that or who particularly they would be targeting, unless it was a full-scale invasion of countries, which of course is not on the table. So it's a very politically thorny situation, and I think we are likely to see more of that in the next few days as this continues to spread across the region.
Thorny it is. Now, how will these events affect sectarian tensions in Libya, and especially in Egypt, where Christians make up around 10% of the population?
Well, this is the ongoing concern, not only in Egypt, but of course in Syria as well, where again the government there is being destabilized even as we speak, and the Christian minority is again threatened with persecution should the Sunnis come to power in or the Shias come to power in Syria. It's a difficult situation because in all of these cases there is this bubbling tension that has been contained for decades under the rule of someone like Mubarak or Gaddafi, which isn't to back up their regimes, their governments, but simply to say that this has been opened up with all of these Arab Springs, which I think were portrayed unproblematically as a win for the United States and for freedom and for NATO. But I think we're starting to see what this is really turning into, and it's not clear at this point where it's going or how it's going to play out, but it's going to have some larger ramifications. And as I say, I think this is going to be a trend that we'll see flaring up across the region in the coming days.
Well, obviously, how the president of America is going to react to this is another thing. They're going to the polls. Americans are going to the polls in November. How do you think the voters are going to take this on? Do you think the presidential vote will have, these events will have some kind of bearing in who wins and who will be commander-in-chief of America in the next couple of months?
In terms of the events that have played out already today, I don't think it's going to have a deciding effect one way or the other. It really depends what comes in the next few days and weeks if this continues to play out. We've already seen Romney try to score some points against Obama for not condemning this strongly enough. But again, I think most people see that for political rhetoric. So I don't think that's going to be changing many people's minds and probably will not have much of a sway on the outcome of the election. But again, it depends on how this plays out and what continues to happen from this point.
What do you think is going to be the reaction from Washington?
I think at this point, there's not much that they can do. As I say, I don't think that there's any way that they can specifically retaliate against the people involved here. I think it's going to have to take place at a more diplomatic level, and they're going to obviously send more security to their embassies in the region, but it's not really clear exactly what they can do other than work with the security forces in Cairo, in Tripoli, and in other places across the region. And at this point, I'm not sure there's much more they can do other than simply beef up security.
James Corbett, live from Japan. Thank you very much for your time. Always good to hear from you. That was James Corbett, independent news editor, speaking to us here on RT.